connect some of the dots here and add up what we've learned just this week. Former Gitmo detainees back in the game, dozens of Americans who hooked up with ISIS militants back in the U.S., and despite pleas from Israel, the administration is, well, talking to Iran. So is it me, or is that sort of like a troublesome trifecta? Let's ask former Defense Department spokesman J.D. Gordon, retired Master Sergeant James Beardsley, former CIA intelligence officer Joshua Katz. All right, Joshua, to you first. What do you make of the confluence of these events?
Well, Neil, this is really interesting. The numbers, and I think the issue here is a semantic issue. And I really wish that we could get beyond numbers and talk about how releases from Guantanamo Bay are really affecting national security. This is not about altogether about whether they're just going back to the battlefield, but that we know that a lot of them are going to support terrorism in one way or the other. Our newfound relationship with Iran is confounding the issues with our traditional allies in the Middle East. So it's issue upon issue upon issue. They're building, and it's just looking pretty challenging out there for this administration and whatever administration is going to follow.
You know what worries me, Sergeant Beardsley, when I listen to all of this is that it's been a good week for the bad guys. I don't know about us guys. What do you make?
Yeah, I'll tell you, we seem to have more and more bad weeks as it goes. You know, we set out on a plan to defeat and degrade ISIS, but releasing these guys back to the battlefield, that's the equivalent of sort of upgrading and repeating what we've done in the past, or what ISIS has done in the past. About 122 of these detainees left, with a majority of those going to the country of Yemen. And as Catherine Herridge reported earlier, Yemen is an unstable, untenable ally. We can't repatriate these prisoners because there is no end of hostility. There is no ceasing of the hostility. You know, we get out of World War II, we come out of major conflicts, and there's an end to hostility, which allows us to take those prisoners of war, repatriate them to society. We don't have that now, so we're going to be playing catch-up for a long time. Today, our service members are in Afghanistan meeting with some of the same Guantanamo prisoners that we've had in custody for the last 10 years. This is an untenable situation, and again, it's an example of being behind the policy.
But you know, J.D., part of the subliminal message in the report released today is it's a process that started under your old boss. In other words, that this is something that started under the prior administration, that is the release of Gitmo detainees. Now it's just picked up a pace. What do you say?
Hi, Neil. It's good to see you. Well, you know, we've released too many detainees since day one because there's so much pressure from the international left. The international left basically blames the United States for world problems, and I think that faculty lounge mentality, which President Obama shares, sees the U.S. power and influence as a problem. So to them, the Guantanamo detainees are just fighting the power, if you will. They're fighting the empire, fighting colonialists. That's why he's so soft on these guys. That's why he lets them go so often. So I don't think you can appease our enemies like he does. President Obama thinks you can appease these guys by closing Gitmo. But look, Neil, these guys, these radical Islam terror groups, have been attacking Americans since the 1970s. Closing Guantanamo is not going to make any difference whatsoever. They're going to keep attacking us till we're wiped off the map, until Israel off the map. So it all goes down to President Obama's flawed leadership and his worldview, which is very harming for the United States.
Well, if you're in Iran, Joshua, and you're looking at the bickering back and forth between our, you know, getting pretty testy with Benjamin Netanyahu now that he addressed Congress and was talking about scrapping a deal that they're cobbling together with the administration. Do you get a sense that the bad guys are really liking all of this? Because we are very, very divided on this. We're more inclined to support or at least understand our enemies than stand by our friends.
Well, it's a very challenging situation, and it's growing. Under this administration, we've seen the power and the regional influence of Iran grow, which is destabilized and is going to destabilize more our traditional allies in the region. So this is a problem that's not going away, and by closely working with Iran on some operations in Iraq really sends a really challenging message. And then on top of that, you add in the nuclear talks, you add in what's going on in Yemen. This growing situation, this destabilization of the region is getting out of control.
You know, Sergeant, the one development I worry the most about this week of these reports of 40 Americans who made their way back here after hooking up with ISIS over there. Now, I don't know what went wrong, but I know that 40 of them back in this country, and many of them we can't trace their whereabouts. That is a big and immediate domestic concern. What do you think?
It certainly is, and it's not just the 40 that have been repatriated to the United States now, but it's the lack of U.S. policy and presence taking the global leadership role. The broader vision for America should be we should be forward on this. Instead, we're waiting for our allies, the Gulf state countries, to take the lead. Jordan, great to see them on board, but if the U.S. does not have a hardened policy against ISIS, the IS fighters are recruiting on big ideas, transcendent ideas. If we don't compete with that, with our larger ideas, and we have an ambiguous policy leaving our service members in harm's way, then we can expect to deal with this problem for a long time. Your previous guest said it. The Iranian influence, whether it's in Yemen, whether it's in Tikrit, wherever it is, we've got a lot of things that are that right behind that. We're going to be dealing with this problem for a while. So if we don't create a clear policy, unambiguous, with a strategy that's backed by resources that Congress agrees to, then we can be expectant to deal with this problem down the road.
Well, I think you're right. And, J.D., I'm not sure Republicans have comported themselves well on this whole DHS funding thing. Now, I understand what they were up to try to stop the funding for that portion of the president's executive order that would implement the cash behind implementing that order to detain deportations for millions of illegals. But do you think in this environment they lost that argument? Now, they've since put it aside. They've since found a measure and a way around it. But the fact of the matter is, it costs them valuable counter ideas to the ones they're criticizing out of the president.
Well, you know, I think that they were at their wits' end to stop President Obama from basically dictating how he's going to run the country. So it's a tough spot that they're in.
No
but
doubt.
I do want to get back. I do want to get back to Iran really quickly. That nuclear accord that we're talking about. Prime Minister Netanyahu was exactly right when he talked to the country about it. It doesn't dismantle their program, and it expires in a decade. It doesn't deal at all with the warhead development. It doesn't deal at all with missile technology. So it only deals with uranium enrichment. So people shouldn't be deceived when President Obama and Secretary Kerry are talking about stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. That's just not the case. They're delaying it, perhaps, but they ought to be a little more forthright with the American people.
Yeah, on all sides. All right, gentlemen, thank you all very, very much.